Hi, it's Shari here today, and I'm going to be making this spooky mummy card with this little puppy from the Happy Halloween set. So I have a piece of storm cloud cardstock, and I was thinking what would be a cool way to kind of have the mummy effect of all the cloth that wraps around a mummy. And I thought of this micropore tape that I'm sure you've seen people use to hold dyes onto paper. It's a surgical tape. You can actually buy it at the drugstore, but it's very thin and you can kind of see through it. So I thought this would be really cool to layer and get the fabric look that you see on a mummy of all those layers of fabric. So you can see I'm layering it here, and you can see you get a different look when you got 2 layers or 3 layers, and I'm just going to cover this whole piece of cardstock. I picked a darker gray for the back so that it would show through the tape. If you did this on white, I don't think that you would see it as well. And I'm going to cover this whole piece. And then I actually took a few pieces and cut them down the middle, so I had some thinner pieces to layer on top. I thought it needed a few more, but with that really wide tape, it covers up a lot. So with a few, I did about 4 here of these thinner pieces. You can just layer them on and not cover up all this cool mummy look that you've got going on here. And then I'm going to die cut this with a smaller rectangle. This is the largest of the small set of stitch rectangles. And then I'm just going to throw the excess away. If you didn't want a border like I'm going to have, you could have always just folded the ends of the tape back behind it. This tape is very thin, so it's not going to really affect anything. So here I've got the Clarity stencil brushes, and I thought it would be really cool to add some slight tint to this tape. So you can leave it as it is, but these are going to bring just a little bit of ink onto it. So you can see I loaded it up with some wilted violet, and I tapped off the excess onto my sheet of typing paper. And then I'm just going to brush from the sides and across in the top, and I'm just putting the purple on the very top third. Here you can see the color sort of change. It's very, very subtle. But I just thought it would be fun to add just a little bit more color to the background with these fun Halloween colors. Now I'm going to go in with the carved pumpkin and do the same thing through the center here. And you just keep working it very lightly until you get the color you want. If you want more color, you just keep brushing it on. I think this is probably the best way to add color to this tape, because if you used a foam blending tool, it might make the edges roll up a little bit. So on the bottom here, I'm using the Twisted Citron. I think these are 3 very traditional Halloween colors: the wilted violet, carved pumpkin, and twisted citron. So I think they go together, and you can see that very, very subtle color there. And I'm just going in with my brushes one more time and getting some of the ink that's still on them off onto the tape. So here I've got some of Louie's ABCs, the B and the O, and I'm going to cut out of this extra piece of black glitter paper that I have a B and 2 O's so that I spell out boo. And that's going to go across the top of my card here. So I'm just going to set this part aside, and then we're going to work on the images. So I'm taking the little dog that's just sitting forward. I'm going to stamp him out twice just in case I mess up. And then I'm going to dress him as a little mummy to go with the background. So I'm going to take the 2 mummy pieces, the part that goes on his head and the part that goes across his body, color those as well. And then I'm actually going to color the little trick-or-treat bucket too. And then I'm also going to use the little tombstone from Spooktacular to just kind of fill in around the little dog on the bottom of the card. So I'm stamping a couple out as is, and then I'm doing a little selective stamping here. I'm just inking up the edges so that I don't get those letters in the middle, and I get a blank tombstone. And then you can put something different on the tombstone. You can see I have one there with a little dog paw that's in the Happy Halloween set. And then actually I'm going to use one that's just blank because I'm going to layer it behind, and it doesn't really need to have anything on it. So now I'm going to get to coloring here, and I'm doing very simple coloring just with a couple shades of brown on my dog. think this is the E23. And then I'm also going to use the E25 for the darker color. So I'm doing the E23 first, and then I'll do a little bit of the E25 kind of under its neck there, on the bottom of its feet, and around the bottom of his nose. And then I'll just go back in with my lighter one and I'll kind of blend it out. Most of the dog kind of gets covered up by the mummy suit anyways. So really the most important part is his face. So also with the mummy, I don't want to leave it just stark white. So I'm going in with a very light E. That was an E00, and this is an E000. And then I'm going to go in with my colorless blender and just kind of blend those out. So it just gives it a little more contrast from being just white and a little more interest. I'm going to color the little Halloween bucket here with some oranges. Like I said, very simple coloring. I'm using a darker one just for the inside so it looks like a bucket, and a little shading along the bottom. And then I'll go back in with one of those really pale E00s and just color the bone for the same reasons that I didn't just leave the mummy wrappings white. So here I've got some grays, some toner grays. I'm going to use a T3 and a T5, I believe. And I'm just doing very simple shading on these as well. And I'm going to color all the tombstones exactly the same. So now I've got some more of that storm cloud cardstock, and I'm going to use the kind of curved meadow border die to make some spooky grass for the bottom of my little scene I've got going on here. I'm just going to tape that on there, and you'll see it's going to layer right there. I had cut that piece to be the same as the stitch rectangle I cut earlier. And I'm going to use some double-sided tape here just so I make sure that it's really well stuck down to this micropore tape that's on the background, because it's kind of more like a fabric. And I have really odd things happening with my lighting right now in the video, and I'm not sure why, so I really apologize for that. So I'm just going to go ahead and stick that spooky grass right down to the bottom of this panel. And now I can kind of start assembling my little scene here. So I'm going to glue the mummy wrappings onto my dog. And I'm just using liquid glue to do that, just so it's nice and stuck down very well. So the ones for his body just kind of layer right on top. And then of course there is the little wrappings for his head. And then I'm going to be using some thin foam squares. These are half the thickness. These are from scrapbook adhesives, and I'm also going to use some full thickness ones, but I'm using the thin ones on the back of the dog and this tombstone, which is kind of going to be in the background, and this one on the side. But the one that I'm about to put on here, I want it layered over top of that one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the full thickness squares, the little small ones, and just put them on the right side. And then I can use a thin one for the left side, and it will layer right on top of that one that already has a foam square. So I'm just going to pull off those backer pieces and start sticking my little images down. I'm going to center my dog up right in the center there. And then I'm going to make the tombstones kind of turn at different angles, like they've settled in the spooky graveyard. That thin one's going to layer right on top of that one that I already put down. I like this one with the little paw on it. And then I'm going to put one of the thicker squares on the back of the trick-or-treat bucket, just so it's in front of the other tombstone. Now I'm going to use some liquid glue and put my little glitter letters down. The trick for this is I'm going to put the B and the O on the end, and then that way I can just center up the O in the middle. That way I'm not prone to getting my word kind of off center and shoved too much to the left side. Now for the rest of my sentiment, I need to use some archival ink so that this will stamp on this tape. It's not exactly paper, and I want to make sure that it's bold and doesn't smear or fade. So I'm going to line that up right underneath the boo. And I really like that the boo letters are kind of crooked and wonky. Now I'm using, this is from the Booyah set. This is the little string, little dotted string that the little spider is going to go on. So the string and the spider are both from the Booyah stamp set. I just thought it added a little cuteness to those big bold boo letters that are there. So there's the string, and I'm going to stamp that little spider both with the archival ink. Now I can add my panel to my card base, which you could have done before if you really wanted to, and since I already have those pieces on there, I'm going to use liquid glue so I don't have to worry about running a tape runner across it. And I'll know that it's nice and stuck down and it's not going anywhere. And I'm just going to center that right onto that card base so I have a nice black mat around my whole panel. And there is the finished card. I just think it's so cute, and I love the texture of that tape in the background. And here is a closer look at that mummy pup. Thanks for watching. Have an amazing day. Bye.